Um, Number one, this is something I found. I don't see too many people talking about it, but it's something that I found very interesting, and that's Indiana Jones 5 possibly de-aging Harrison Ford. Now, that seems like that's commonplace now, right? Like a lot of movies just do that. I mean, like I think one of the most ridiculous de-aging moments was when Robert Downey Jr. was de-aged in what was that, Civil War?
Yeah.
And like, listen, the guy was aging pretty well. Like, I get what they were doing, but it just seemed like that was very frivolous. Like, hey, look what we can do. Here's young, here's young Tony Stark. But then they did add that as like a part of a story for a future movie, so they didn't let it lie. But anyway, and also to me, one of the best examples of de-aging is Ant-Man. What's his name? Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas. Yeah, that was really good.
That was really good, mostly because I've grown up with Michael Douglas, and like, I mean, I know that face. I know his face.
You know what else was kind of impressive, and nobody ever talks about it, and I think that's why it's kind of impressive. Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina in No Way Home were both de-aged. Specifically, Alfred Molina was de-aged in that movie.
Yeah, he was. I could tell though a little bit.
It doesn't look amazing, but
I didn't know about William Dafoe because he's always looked old. So
he's kind of always looked old. I don't know if it was necessary to de-age him, but they did. So
yeah, I mean he was in Aquaman and he looked almost exactly the same. So anyway, so why am I bringing this up? Why is Indiana Jones 5 possibly de-aging Harrison Ford? Why is this in the news? Well, because it's specifically what Steven Spielberg didn't want to do. As a matter of fact, Steven Spielberg, who famously co-created and directed all the Indiana Jones movies, co-created with George Lucas, he handed over this franchise and he says, listen, I just want to see what somebody else will do with it. But he also said this. Let me bring up my card here. He says, I would never do any Indy retread where I took Indiana's face the way it exists in 2011. That's when this quote was, and youngify him. I would never do that. And that's exactly what this director is doing. I forget Mangold. Is that who's doing it?
James Mangold. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So it's kind of like people are like, what are you doing, Mangold? Steven Spielberg, it goes against his wishes of, what he didn't want to do for Indiana Jones. Number one, Seth, I do have a question here. Do you think it matters? Do you think this is a big deal at all? Or do you think this is people are just blowing things out of proportion because Steven Spielberg's gold and everything he says is perfect?
No, I don't think it matters. I'll be honest. We know he's being de-aged. We've seen the set photos, and he handed over the franchise.
Right.
For somebody to do what they want to do.
That's the ticket. That's the whole point. He handed over the franchise. Wait. Okay. Well, here you go. Do what you. I want to see what somebody else can do with that. Well, Steven Spielberg, to be fair, is not the one who's come out going, hey, you know what? I said I would never do that. But this number two, this is like also in 2011 when that first quote came out, and that was 11 years ago.
Yeah, that's an 11-year-old quote.
When Harrison Ford was still like old as dirt then. No offense to anybody that's old as dirt. But and he also used youngify him because de-aging wasn't a term yet. I don't see anything here worth, getting in a tiff over, but it seems like there were some comments I saw on Twitter where people were like saying it was disrespecting the original, the original concept and the original whatever Steven Spielberg wanted for the movies. But I think people are just in Twitter, they just love to hear themselves talk. So
I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, it's not like they're going completely against something in the franchise or anything. It's a small thing. I'm sure. Obviously, we don't know, but I feel like it's only going to be for a flashback or two. Like,
you think so?
I think so. Yeah.
You think they're going to keep him regular aged Harrison Ford for the most of it, and then have a couple flashbacks? I thought that too.
I do. Knowing James Mangold, especially with what he did with Logan, I think he's going to really want to show his age. He's going to want to show how old Indiana Jones.
Yeah. I mean, what about Logan? He aged. He aged Hugh Jackman. He didn't
aged
de-age
Hugh
him,
Jackman.
aged him.
If you see a picture of Hugh Jackman now, he looks 10 years younger than he did in Logan. Like,
he looked so grit in Logan.
He did. That's a good movie.
It was good. I watched it the other night.
I did too. Yeah, no, I'll be honest. I've never seen Indiana Jones, but
You gotta fix that because Seth, they are wonderful movies. They're right up there with Star Wars and like in the sense of like think of every like space movie that comes out, you think of Star Wars automatically, right?
yeah.
Well, that's how like globe-trotting adventures are. It all started with Indiana Jones.
I've seen the third one, but that's it. Only the third one.
That's a good one.
You made me watch it, yeah, because I remember I was at your house and you were like, "Do you want to watch Indiana Jones?" It was like you were like, "Third one's the best." I was like, "Yeah, but I've never seen any of them, so we should start with the first one." You were like, "Yeah, no, let's watch the third one." So we watched the third one.
Well, because but let's not dive down too far into this. But first of all, like I know probably at the time that we were watching, how long ago was this?
A year, maybe.
Really, that short? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like you've always had this habit of you're growing out of it, but you used to have this habit where you would, if a movie wasn't fun and exciting, like through most of it, you wouldn't get wrapped up in the story. I'm not
10 anymore.
I know, but like in here, in dad continuity and your mom's continuity, you are. So like we still act like that sometimes. We're learning too, son. And so like that was just my way of like, well, let me show you the one that is the most exciting, at least according to my opinion, and you don't really need to watch the previous ones to know what's going on. It's pretty cut and dry.
I liked it. I'll say that.
It's a good movie. And you know, to be honest, this is a little bit of me, but I as much as I do like the first movie, I would prefer 2 and 3 over the first one.
2 and 3.
Which people are just up in arms about when I say that because they're like, what the hell are you talking about? But the second movie is more nostalgic because I grew up watching that movie on a loop when I was a kid. And I was like, I used to walk around and ask your grandmother and your grandfather to call me Dr. Jones. I was like, call me Dr. Jones. Like, I was obsessed with that movie. There's a reason why I have a fedora and whip hanging. You can't see it because it's off camera, but there's a reason why I have this stuff here. I love Indiana Jones. I wanted a new whip every year for my birthday so I could be like Indiana Jones, and that was because of Temple of Doom. So that's why that movie's creeps up higher than the first one in my mind.
That's fair. I like that. I like that story actually. You know what I was saying though is I'm still excited for this, even though I've never seen an Indiana Jones movie other than the third one, and I'm really curious to see what James Mangold is gonna do. Because I mean, it depends, especially after Logan.
Yeah, is
Disney going to let him go a little darker with it? Does he want to go a little darker with it? I would assume, but I don't know. And I don't
know if darker would be the right word. I feel like he would
more mature story.
I would say yes. Heavier is where I would head to. A little bit heavier.
Yeah, heavier story. Are they going to let him do that if he wants to? Will Indiana Jones die?
I mean,
probably.
It's one good way to make sure they don't try to bring Harrison Ford back for a.
I'm pretty sure that Harrison Ford would want that. So, I mean, maybe Indiana Jones will die. I don't know. I don't really have much room to talk about it because, I haven't seen the franchise, but I'm still excited for it. I just want a title for the movie. That's all I want. They're hiding the title for some reason. I don't know why.
What? I wonder what possible titles there could be, like Indiana Jones 5 and
let's call it Indy.
And Indiana Jones 5, and the fact that I'm going to ignore that I have a kid in this movie because he learned he had a kid in the fourth movie.
In the fourth one, yeah, they don't want Shia LaBeouf back.
What a missed opportunity! That kid was such a good actor. Is such a good actor. He's an amazing actor. He's just a little kooky. So
a little.
Hey man, Hollywood does weird shit to people. Okay. But I'll tell you what, listen, don't ever give up on somebody. Hollywood makes people act mad. And yeah, he's made some decisions, but he's also made some really good movies on his own. I think, and I know we're going out down another rabbit hole here, but Shia LaBeouf, actually within the past few years did a movie about himself where he played his father. And like, I haven't seen it, but I've heard really good things about it. And like, people are like, you know what? This is the Shiloh. This is the guy we want. And I think he's maybe coming out of it, but yeah, he's a little weird, cutting his face for that one movie, and he kept cutting it every day to make sure it was fresh.
I mean, he was making his way, like, I mean, obviously he had been part of Hollywood for a very long time, but he was starting to really kind of have a resurgence. Is that the word, right word? He's really starting to show himself and prove himself. People are like, hey, I really like this guy. And then all the stuff came out about him, and everybody was like, never mind. I don't like this guy anymore. He's weird. Well, he's a psycho. Like, he's just a weird guy. Like,
well, I think my biggest thing with, again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but like, I think my biggest thing with Shia LaBeouf and where he is now, and why it's going to be hard for him to move forward in any movie, is not because of him wearing the paper bag says I used to be famous, and not the questionable method acting he does in his roles, but I think what it is like when he turns the camera on and he's high, and you could tell he's high, like when he was in that streaming thing with a whole bunch of other celebrities, like famously, I think Morgan Freeman was part of it, and he's just sitting there like in his car, he's passing out, like that's bad. Like that's somebody who needs help. So but Indiana Jones possibly de-aging Harrison Ford. Could it be a flashback? Could it be not a flashback? Let us know in the comments below. If it bothers you, if it doesn't bother you, why the hell are we even talking about it? Is Steven Spielberg pissed? Do you have a quote? Let us know in the comments below. Okay.